The unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I have vowed to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Well, we just had our stupa ceremony, a memorial for Reverend Master Jiyu, which we love to do. And somehow we don't seem to do it as often as we'd like, because sometimes the weather doesn't comply or other things are happening. But today we did it. It was lovely. So I've had a little teaching from Reverend Master Jiyu for us. The lava lamp. Those of us who are ancient remember the lava lamp from probably the 70s, I guess it was. Reverend Master Jiyu loved lava lamps. She had several of them. Partly because they're really fun to watch. You watch it's the glute. I'll explain. For those who may not know, you have a vessel of mostly some kind of liquid. And it also has a sort of separate liquid, maybe oily or something, which resides at the bottom of a different color, maybe red, often red, because it's nice. And you have a little lamp in the bottom which heats it up. So you turn the lamp on, and after a while, the red gloop at the bottom starts to heat up and rise through the clear liquid to the top. And then it stays there for a while, and then it starts coming back down. So it comes in gloops. It's not all at once. You get gloops, is a technical term, of the stuff going up, residing there for a while. Then it cools and starts to come down again, back to the ooze at the bottom. And it's a really nice analogy to explain no separate self, anatta, and also rebirth. Because you come up from this primordial ooze, from Buddha nature, life, whatever you like to call it, the stuff that we all come from, and we have different ways of looking at it. We come up from that, we take form, we're born and so forth. We live our life, we rise up, we live our life, we're there for a while, then we get cool, we get old, sick or whatever, we die, and we come back down to the ooze. Taking form as a seemingly separate being, and then we return to the ooze with everything else. So you can see this in the physical world. We all take form from our world, all the same way. You take form from our parents, who took their form from their parents, and so on. We all come from the same kind of stuff. We're all supported and nourished by other beings, things of the world, food. We're all the same. We all take form and nourishment and everything we have, essentially from the same place, from this planet, from life, however we want to look at it, and other beings, each other. We all depend completely on the earth, we all depend completely on each other. None of us will get anywhere without all that. So everything that we have depends completely on other beings, on other things. They all ooze in a sense. None of us is really separate at all. So we might think we're separate, we might look separate, here we are, little bodies here, but in fact, we're not separate at all. And we're all made of the same stuff, same particles, subparticles and all that. We're all made of stardust, it would seem, and I just love that. We're all made of the same stuff. Nothing is different. We're all exactly, really, in a sense, made of the same gloop. Us, animals, plants, rocks, trees, the planet, other planets, and all that. So we all come out of that primordial ooze, life, Buddha nature, how we want to look at it. And when we die, we return to that, whether we're as a whole body, as ashes, whatever. And spiritually, the other aspect, we all have our different karmic inheritance. We each receive a package, along with our consciousness, that part of us which knows, which is aware. And we're all part of Buddha nature. None of us separate at all. And Reverend Master Jiyu had another analogy about rebirth. She said that when we're reborn, it's like a buffet line, where you're being served. You have your thing and you get a dollop of spuds and a dollop of vegetables and whatever. And like that, we receive our dollop of karma, our dollop of anger, greed, ignorance, and so forth. Some of us might have a bigger dollop than others of some of these aspects, and some of them have a smaller dollop, some of us. But it's not a cause for judgment. It's the karma we've inherited. But because we don't think of ourselves as just part of everything else, because we feel like a separate reality, we don't quite understand that it's not a separate self that's reborn. And this is why the doctrine of rebirth is not the same as the doctrine of reincarnation, where you have a soul that's reborn from life to life. This is what the Buddha said was different, because up to then, in Indian religion, there's a soul that's reborn from life to life and gets better, and hopefully, and so forth. But in Buddhism, he said, it's not a soul. You don't have an individual soul that's reborn. This is a dramatic change. You have consciousness, that which is part of us that's aware, and we have our karma that we bring from life to life, or something brings from life to life. But because it's not a separate me, really we just inherit it, we're just given it. We're there on our food line and we get our dollop of this, that and the other thing. So there's no cause for judgment. If I have a bigger dollop of anger than another person, it's not because I'm a bad person or an angry person, it's because I have this to deal with. And it's hard to understand because we feel like a self. It's very hard to understand that teaching of we're not a separate self. We feel so much like a separate self. And there's a certain aspect of truth in that. It's a functional, what Master Dai's used to call it, a functioning thesis or something. What is it?
Psychophysical.
Well, no, just like the kind of a convenient fiction. Convenient fiction, that's what he said. And I think that's a very nice way to describe it. So it's not really a true, real thing. It's just what we think is real, and so we act from that. But actually, we're not really a separate self. We just think we are. With rebirth, we might have memories of things that people did in previous lives, which feels like me, because we feel like we identify with that. But actually, it's not us as we think of ourselves. Now, I haven't experienced previous lives, but I know lots of people who have, and have no reason to doubt them. So, I'm just saying, this is what Buddhism teaches. What is what other teachers say. So I can't say, oh yes, I know all about this. But Buddha Master taught us this, and other monks have taught us this, and I feel it true. So we get our share of greed, anger, and ignorance as we give through our food line. But as I said, it's not a me that's created these things. This little me has not done those things or suffered those things. The suffering we've undergone or the suffering we've created. It's not me as I think of myself that did those things. So what we get is not a judgment, It's just what we've inherited. We don't have to judge ourselves as we have a lot of fear or anger or greed or whatever it might be. It's just what we've inherited. But we are responsible for what we do with it. What do I do with this anger? What do I do with this fear? We don't have to feel, I'm an angry person. That doesn't help, because then we get a judgment in there. But we could say, I have a lot of anger to deal with and I need to work on it. Or fear, anxiety, or whatever it might be. We're still responsible for what we do, no matter what. But it's not a judgment. And this is the great saving grace of that doctrine of no separate self. We don't have to feel, I'm a bad person because I have these difficulties, or I'm a bad person because I was born in a very difficult situation. We're not helpless victims of fate, and we're not prejudged. We judge ourselves, actually. It's nice if we can stop doing that. We don't want to blame karma or fate or God or anything else for the circumstances of our birth and what we have inherited that we need to deal with. We just need to accept it and work with it, do our best with it, without all that judgment and so forth. Somebody we know who had a chronic and serious illness said to me once, well, if somebody has to have this illness, why shouldn't it be me? And I was so impressed. I thought, whoa, what an attitude to say, why should it not be me? Rather than, why me? It's a completely different attitude. And it really helps you if you can accept what comes your way, even if it's difficult, painful, whatever, a lot of wisdom in that. Why should it not be me? We don't need to make it all worse by being resentful or feeling we can't do anything. I'm helpless, I can't help it. We can do something. We can accept it and do our best with it, whatever it might be. If it's a terrible illness, we just do our best with it. Do our best to mitigate it, to help it, to cure it if we can, or just accept it and not kick against it, because that's just another suffering. Maybe we can't help having an illness or anger or fear or whatever it is. This is what we've got. But we can do what we can to help ourselves. This is the cleansing of karma. As it said, feeling is the reaper of karma. What does that mean? What it means is, when we feel anger or fear or resentment or whatever it might be, if you can sit still with it, not act on it, let it just be there, not try and chase it away, but let it be there and let it leave when it wants to go. Letting go doesn't mean it always goes away right away, but let it come, let it go. This is what we do with our meditation. Let it come in, let it be there, let it leave. And don't judge it, and don't try and fix it, and don't try and drive it away. And this is how we cleanse our karma. It was an illness, to do our best to accept it, and to do our best with it, to accept it, to help it if we can, as I said. And our acceptance helps us to bear it, whatever it might be. All acceptance is the key that unlocks the gateless gate. It's completely true on a number of levels. Just to accept what comes our way, without all that judgment, and without resentment, actually, as best we can. And if we have resentment, let's sit still with that. That's another thing, The more deeply we can accept the things that come our way, the more we can let go of our suffering and find peace and even gratitude in the midst of it all. Well, back to the lava lamp. So we all come from the same basic stuff, even though we each have our varying karmic inheritance. All the blobs are different shapes, different shapes, but they feel like separate blobs, they look like separate blobs. And we take form, we live our life as best we can, and then we age, we die, we go back to the earth. Our body returns to the earth, either as a body or as ashes or whatever, fed to the fish, whatever. And what goes on to the next life, it is said, are our consciousness and our karma. That which knows, that which is aware and awake, and the karmic inheritance, which goes on to another being, who isn't me, because there isn't this self from life to life. Very hard to fathom and get our head around, but I think it's a vital aspect of the Buddha's teaching, that there isn't a separate little self that is judged or has to judge itself. And Buddha nature permeates the whole lot of it. The gloop at the bottom, Buddha nature. The water that you rise through, that's Buddha nature too, just living our life, everything at the top, the whole lot. The lamp itself, the vessel, is Buddha nature. And the little switch. So it looks as though we're separate beings when we take form, just as in the lava lamp. But that's just our delusion, it's our ignorance, which causes almost all the suffering in this world, thinking we're a separate self. If you think about it, thinking we're the center of the universe, we have to have what we want, everything revolves around me, the whole world is about me and my stuff and what I want and what I don't want, and I'll do anything to get my way. And it also means we can feel isolated and lonely because we're separate. We think we're separate from everybody else, although we're not. But we're not separate. Even for a moment are we separate. We're all completely dependent on one another, completely interconnected. Even our own body is not as impermeable as we think. It transpires, it sweats, it brings in liquids and food, lets them out. We breathe in air that somebody else has just breathed. Where are we separate? How can we create a little shell around ourselves? It's not a reality. Everything that we have, everything that we do, say, and think is completely influenced and influencing other beings, things, people. It's all completely interdependent, everything interconnected. And it all comes from that same gloop. None of us is very important. None of us is special. None of us has some special thing, a special sort of little gloop lump that nobody else has, my own little gloop lump. No, we're all just part of that gloop. I mean, none of us is actually that different from anybody else. We might think we are, we have our own karma and our own stuff, but in fact, we're not that different. And the more we realize this, the less we suffer. The more we feel a part of everyone and everything else, the less we suffer. And the less isolated and lonely we feel. And the more we can take responsibility for our life, what we do with it, without getting sort of hamstrung by judgment. Oh, I have this horrible karma. Oh God, you have no idea how awful it is. That's not very helpful. Just to say, well, we've all got our stuff. If not me, why not? Why not me? Has to be somebody who has this karmic burden. Somebody has to go to somebody. Why not me? Very helpful. We feel more connection with other beings, more sympathy for what other beings go through, their sufferings, because we feel more connected with them. Well, another thing our lava lamp can teach us is about impermanence, where it's constantly moving. These lumps are getting warm, rising, getting to the top and then coming back down constantly, and they do kind of like this, Life is constantly flowing through us, flowing through everything. Everything is moving all the time. Even on the molecular level, you see, this is lovely. All these little things whizzing around at vast speed. Not only that, but nearly completely empty, actually. And they keep finding smaller particles, and that's empty too. And then there's, it doesn't seem like there's much solidity about anything, but it looks like it. It's just a fiction, And if we didn't have magnetism and anti-magnetism, we would just pass through each other. It's the magnetic things that keep us from bumping into each other or passing through each other. We do bump into each other because of magnetism. This is all very mysterious, and I love it, and I don't understand it. But the fact that we are not as real as we think we are, that we're mostly empty space, that we're all made of essentially the same stuff, and that life is constantly flowing through all of it. We are born, we live, we die. Plants, animals, people, mountains, rocks, planets and stars are born, live and die. And we're just a tiny speck in the midst of all this. And just as you look up outside and you see the stars and you think, wow, it's all so vast. We cannot possibly fathom it. And we're a part of it. We're made of that stuff. We're not separate in any way. It's wonderful. And we just try to do our best with this little tiny life we have, with all its joys and sorrows and mistakes and foolishness and successes and failures and all that, our talents and our imperfections, to do our best with all of it, to accept everything that comes our way with faith and with gratitude. No matter what it is, we can use it to the good. Use it to help ourselves, use it to help our world. And that's what Master Jiyu's teaching for us today. So thank you for all being here, and we'll see you again. Thank you.